You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We love MotoGP. Hello and welcome to Missed Apex MotoGP Podcast. This is a show put together by MotoGP fans pretending to be experts. We aim to have a race review show ready for a midweek commute. We may just be punters, but we love to talk. The Dutch TT at the Cathedral of Speed gave Marc Marquez the chance to stand at the altar of greatness as he equalled Agostini's Grand Prix win record. Marco Bezzecchi gave Aprilia solace in the face of continued rider controversy whilst Alex Marquez was punished by the racing gods. As ever, I am your host Kyle Power, and today I am joined in the virtual shed by some fellow MotoGP enthusiasts. Returning from his week in exile, it's co-host Jules Seegers. How's it going, Jules?
Hi, Kyle. Broke free just in time to review my home Grand Prix, so let's go.
Excellent, we had to have you along for this one. And joining us today is tyre-obsessed trumpeter Matt Trumpets. How's it going, mate?
It's going great. I'm excited to talk about this race because once again, lots of tyre shenanigans.
Absolutely. And going into the weekend overview then, we've got a bit of tyre news already. So we'll start with Espargaro is filling in for Marini. So it was Nakagami last time, I believe, but Espargaro's got his second wild card ride. I bet Morbidelli's chuffed at that. Jorge Martin return is nearing of some positive news about his injuries, but the saga has been reignited. But we'll talk a bit more about that later. And Jules, Michelin are not bringing their new front tyre next year after all. Like, why?
Yeah, not after all. After they delayed it last season, decided not to bring it on for 25 and postponed it for 26, and now they have said we're not going to do it at all. Basically, their official reading is that there was too much ambiguity about that new front tire. It was designed to solve the front tire pressure issues. It was supposed to be a bit wider and a bit softer on the sides. But they say the opinions amongst riders is too much varied. Pecco Bagnaia, for instance, likes it. Bezzecchi didn't like it. And they said, we don't have consensus about it. If you read between the lines, I think it's Michelin saying 26 is our last season and we don't want to go out with half of the grid moaning about our final tire. Let's keep it the way it is right now. Everybody can kind of get along with our tires and we'll be fine for our farewell song.
Boo Michelin. Boo is all I can say. I think they're just being cheapskates. They just don't want to manufacture new tyres, Trumpets.
Well, I will disagree to the extent that they need the testing to build a decent tire, and that's always been the limiting factor here. They've not had a proper amount of testing, given the amount of energy that's being put through those tires now. That said, it seems like the riders were complaining about the medium tire anyway, so I don't know that it's going to shut off the spigot of discontent that has been started.
Yeah, it's a shame. So we're stuck with these city tyre pressure penalties essentially for another year after this, which is insane. But anyway, we move on. We're stuck with it. Can't do much about it. So heading into the weekend then. So Marc has a 40-point lead over his brother Alex Marquez. And Bagnaia is a further 110 points back, which is crazy. And then the battle for fourth and fifth in the championship is hotting up between Morbidelli on 142 points back from Marc and Digi on 150 points back from Marc. So only 8 points separating them. So then, guys, going into practice, and Jules, lots and lots of crashes. I think it was Bastianini and Aleix went down first, followed by Marc. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, there was some talk about the track feeling a bit greasy, though normally the grip at Assen is just fine. But if you listen to some of the riders and some of the teams, it was also a matter of not having too many sets of soft tires allocated to them. So for the first outings, they tend to use up the tires that they won't use for the rest of the weekend, which happened to be the medium front tire. And the temperatures were a bit lower than last season at Assen and then would be for the rest of the weekend. weekend, early on Friday. So it was not the right tire, a bit of a green track, a bit of lower temperatures that just made a lot of riders in the first 10 minutes go one after another. So it was a kind of a perfect storm.
Yeah, Matt, the pretty big crashes for Bastianini and Aleix, but then the big news from free practice one was Marquez having quite a nasty high side there and looked like he was hurt.
Yeah, and this is the thing where you worry about, especially with Mark, who's been very injured before. And the riders are essentially saying that, look, we'd rather get rid of this medium tire and bring a proper allocation of softs and hards that have a wider performance range temperature-wise. Because the medium tire to them, and this is the criticism of the riders, is essentially they call it a transport tire. It loads up unpredictably and lets go without warning, and it makes it very difficult, even if you're trying to be careful, to keep the bike out of trouble. Now, not every crash was caused on the medium. It happened on the medium tire, don't get me wrong, but it was a very consistent criticism across all of the riders to start the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mark's first crash that he had was actually caused by him saying downshifting a bit too fast, going into that really, really fast left-hander before the, I think it's the Gertimmer chicane. Sorry, Jules, I'm going to murder the pronunciations. Anything you can to help us out with that. But yeah, he had nasty high side and then hit the gravel and went through. And one of Mark's big complaints was the gravel's not really gravel. He said they're like quite big rocks, and he was hitting the rocks and instantly got up, had a look at his hand. It's like, oh dear. And surely, were you thinking the same as me? I was thinking, oh, this is the championship potentially wide open now.
Yeah, every time Mark looks at his arm or his hand, you fear the worst because of his history, especially with his left, of course. But yeah, he had a point. If you saw some of the bikes and riders going through that gravel, it was more like rocks, like a bed of rocks instead of the gravel we're used to. So especially if you go like face down like he did, and your private parts with that velocity have to scratch that surface. Yeah, there are more convenient and relaxed ways to go down than that.
I was going to say, I think his crew chief called it the most expensive free practice in MotoGP history.
Wow. Yeah, that's saying something. There's a lot of carbon fibre damaged. And oddly to that, another point, because Mark binned it in free practice one, he wrecked his fairing, which forced him onto the new aero update. He actually then ran that subsequently, like there on in for the rest of the weekend, where Bagnaia still hasn't moved over to it. So Digia and Mark were both on the new aero, but I don't think that was a conscious decision. He just trashed his previous sets of aero, because in the practice session, you know, the one that sets the top 10, he was comfortably in the top 10, but then right at the end of the session had his second massive crash at the weekend that Jules alluded to, had well over 100 mile an hour slide through the gravel on his plums, essentially, and had a bit of plum crush, it would seem, got up instantly and then instantly went down to the deck. And for our male listeners, everyone will understand there the feeling he was getting just then, and looked super uncomfortable for the rest of the weekend. So it looked like sort of open goal for his rivals. This is exactly what they need, particularly Bagnaia, and also Quattararo. Jules was looking like mega quick and really quick all through the weekend.
Yeah, there was some expectation about him to do very well for Paul this weekend, and he was there on Friday, and I think he even topped the Saturday morning session. But he had a massive gain of time in the last sector, especially the last chicane. Let's just call him the GT corner. That's the easiest for you guys. But
say it properly. What is it? Put us out of misery.
It's called the Geert Timmer bocht.
We'll stick to GT. Yep.
Yeah, let's do that. But yeah, he had a massive final sector, and he put it on pole again, which was for the form that his Yamaha has been in kind of the last couple of races after that string of poles earlier in the season. It was really good to see him up there, and it brought up hopes for the sprint and the Sunday race.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah.
Massively quick. He was looking super good all through quali. Was there any other massive observation for you through quali? I noticed there was a bit of shenanigans going on as well with the following.
Yeah, no, it was kind of interesting to see Marquez following Bagnaia out of the pits. This surprised me, but I also know that mind games are a Mark forte. But Bagnaia, actually, if we're talking about things that were promising, his qualifying was a lot more promising than it has recently been. And I was after the excitement of Mugello, I'm like, okay, he's bringing it. He's bringing it. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I didn't expect much out of him in the sprint because I just don't, period. But I was like, oh, this could be a really good Sunday.
Absolutely. Well, you've mentioned the sprint. We may as well move on and review that then now. So on to the sprint review then, and well, Jules, what went wrong for Fabio Quartararo from pole position then? What happened there?
Yeah, it was just such a shame. I mean, like I said, he got our hopes up, and we even said to each other well, this could be really spicy. We have a Yamaha up front, we have a Ducati, we have the Aprilia from Bez close. Even Acosta qualified in the top 10, so we were like, let's go. And then the start, and he got jumped by, I think, immediately Pecco and Mark. And it was just like a stone dropping in the water. He just fell back, and I'm not sure if it was the sprint or the Sunday where he had to avoid the crash. I think that was on Sunday.
Was Sunday, I think. Yeah.
But he said he ended up in the gravel trap when he must have run wide then on Saturday. And so, yeah, he dropped back so many positions, which was a real shame. And he said we just lack the straight line speed. And of course, in Assen, you can do with a bit of straight line speed. And there's not too many hard braking zones. And it was just weird how that bike is somehow really good to set up for a single lap time. But then during race trim, he just struggles so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And he certainly did end up in the gravel because he ended up binning it right towards the end of the sprint. And Mark, what you just said there, that's quite good. Yeah, because Mark, did you see the interview? There was a little clip caught. You heard Mark talking to him, and Mark was like, "I don't know how you're getting those lap times out because the bike's basically crap, isn't it?" It was doing that. So, Matt, what more could he have done, really?
I don't think there's much. My memories on this Saturday, there was a crash right behind him that kind of stemmed the bleeding for him. But essentially, to me, this is I'm drawing on my bike racing days now, as I was never a phenomenal hill climber. So my favorite tactic was to ride to the dead front of the pack at the start of the climb and then just slowly go backwards and hope that I was in touch with the leading group over the top of the hill. And I kind of get the idea this is where Yamaha is, especially on tracks where they know they're going to be vulnerable, where you need lots of power and speed, which is still their Achilles heel. So I feel like they're on the right track. I think his issue is the same one we saw with the Honda riders earlier. He's trying to hang on to that pace beyond where the bike and the tires can manage.
Yeah, and Assen would be a great track to try that tactic because it's not known for having a lot of overtaking opportunities. There's only a few spots on the track that really are blatant overtaking spots. So you could say it's worth a shot if they went for the Matt Trumpets bike riding tactic.
Yeah, I think what Quartararo is having now is kind of having the Marc Marquez Honda syndrome as sort of Trumpets alluded to, where he's having to push beyond the means of the bike, and fair play, he's just riding the wheels off it until he either falls off or the bike breaks, as we've seen before. He just plummets down. It's a massive shame. But someone who was pushing really hard said is Mark himself, who had a great start, got into P2, then took the lead, and as you said, Jules, really hard for everyone else to overtake, and just hung on, even though he was looking extremely second-hand.
Yeah, afterwards there were a lot of people online and even some of the pundits saying like, why didn't Alex attack? He looked faster. Also, the Dutch comms over here, they were like, it feels like Alex is having more pace than Mark did, but Mark defended just really well, and the exact places where Alex was stronger than him, with a couple of right-hand corners, he was able to parry that, and then leaving turn 15, that's the left-hander going to the final chicane. He was just able to pick up enough speed and use that Ducati GP25 acceleration to just give himself enough room to stay ahead of striking distance from Alex. So I think even I should check, but I think even afterwards Mark said that Alex had more pace than me, but I was just able to defend in just the right place.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Alex was absolutely faster over the course of a single lap than Mark was during the sprint. But the problem for Alex has already been pointed out. I'm sort of, preaching the choir here. Mark was very fast in the few places where you could actually overtake. And so he was either able to create a deficit that was too large to really get him offline, or he was able to brake and be accurate on the line where there was no other way through. And that's all that it was. That said, it's still, I feel like, a bit of an open question how hard the brothers are really ever going to race each other. They're brothers.
Well, yeah.
And I think it's a fair question to raise, but I think in this instance, I don't think there's anything else Alex could have done about it.
I think that's a very good question to raise, and I reckon we should discuss that a little bit later as one of our key points, because there's been quite a lot of controversy around this. So a little bit of controversy in the sprint, if you're a Factory Ducati and a Pecco supporter, was, well, not much controversy, but a bit of dismay, was dropping down from P2 at the start. And yeah, that was a bit of a painful slump down to P5. Jules, yeah, again, struggling sprint.
It was the same old song, and the thing is, we all almost knew this was going to happen. Not only because of his struggles on the GP25, but the struggles in his sprints that he somehow seems to suffer from more than last year, even though he says he had them last year as well. And we've talked about this before. He says he struggles with the size of the sprint tank, which is obviously smaller than the one you need for the Sunday race, and it changes the balance and the dynamic, etc., etc. But somehow last season he did win sprint races, and he was able to really put on some great battles with Jorge Martin on the Saturdays. But now it maybe is a sum of the GP25 struggles together with the sprint struggles. I don't know, but it was just painful. And he was the last GP25 to finish, because Digi overtook him, and
Again.
To drop back from P2. I think it was the first time that he qualified in front of Mark. Even Mark was on the second row. And then it was just disheartening.
I don't know. I mean, it's disheartening in the sense that we want to see a real battle between Mark and Pecco. But in terms of his sprint performance, I find it very consistent with last season. I remember mentioning at one point, it's taken him till Sunday to get on his game. It's almost like the sprint race becomes like a bit of a setup, puzzle challenge, data generating event for his engineers, except for now, having heard more about it, it's very clearly something about the bike makes him feel uncomfortable. And if you feel uncomfortable, if the bike feels unpredictable to you, you simply can't perform at the margins that are required. I mean, to you or me, we'd be nowhere close. But when you're talking about people who are in the hundredths of a percent in terms of their talent, then those margins become huge.
Yeah, good point. He's lost the feeling. And I think everyone's sick of hearing it, isn't it? Basically, Bagnaia talking about his feeling, and they're in lack of. And I bet who had a lack of feeling, who wished they had a lack of feeling, was Mark, because I think he was suffering a bit physically as he come over the line, but hung on to the win. So Marc Marquez ends up winning, Alex Brother second, and Bez, a really strong, brilliant third for Aprilia. Digi in fourth after mugging Bagnaia, and Bagnaia in fifth. So a bit of a damp squib for Bagnaia moving into the Grand Prix, which we shall review now. So onto the Grand Prix review, and as ever we like to break these down into some topics, and we'll have a bit of discussion around some of these topics. So the first one, and this is becoming a bit of a common theme, so we won't gag too hard over him, but again, what can you say? Marc Marquez on one of his weakest tracks, with a weakened body after two huge crashes, not being the fastest rider all weekend, delivers the double. Again, this is the third weekend in a row that he's done the double. And it's been at two tracks that he shouldn't have done it at, really. These were Pecco Bagnaia's strongest tracks, and he's dunked the double on him twice, Trumpets.
Yeah, and I'm going to put that entirely down to him getting ahead of his brother at the start. If he hadn't pulled that off, I think he doesn't win this race. Even though I don't think Bagnaia wins the race either. The fact that he was able to get ahead of his brother meant that he had that same advantage we saw in the sprint. He was fast in really the only good passing zones.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, Jules, I think I said in our group chat, I was like if Mark gets to the lead, they're going to have difficulty, but they shouldn't have let him get to the lead.
Yeah, it's just somehow, and that's, I think you can't really explain it other than his surplus of quality, his that extra skill, that extra bit that he's able to bring that the others just don't have, and he's able to push for that extra few tenths to just get that bike in the position that he needs. And like you said, that once he's in the lead, I mean, who's going to overtake him from that? And and then it's just a matter of just staying in touching distance with him, and maybe if he makes a mistake. But even then, we almost every race you see him running wide, or sooner or later sometime. But even then, he's just so at ease with his bike right now, despite the crashes in practices and such. It's been a while that he's not been in control on the sprint or the Grand Prix, and I think he was in more pain than he let it show. I think afterwards he said that during the Sunday warm up, he said I can ride like this, but then he said adrenaline takes over, and he said to the Ducati guys, I'm not able to race like this, but then he's a winner, isn't he? And then he said adrenaline is the best medicine for pain.
Absolutely, and he's had this thing throughout his whole career where he doesn't like to show weakness and doesn't like to show how injured he is. And Susie Perry on the TNT Sports coverage made an insane comment that when at the height of the rivalry with the Italian riders and sort of Rossi and everything, obviously the Clinica Mobilia, their mobile clinic that they have going round the paddock with them, it was run by Dr. Aldo Costa, who was they're all Italians, and Susie Perry actually said that Mark would not go to the Clinical Mobilia so they wouldn't leak to the Italian riders of how injured he was. So he wouldn't go there, so he tried to keep it a secret how hurt he actually was, which, Matt, I just found insane when she said that. That's bonkers.
It's bonkers. But as long as you know and your doctor knows that you're okay to race, then it actually makes sense to me. I'm going to go back to my bike racing days once again. I got a tip from a guy who won the Killington race, which is a 5-day stage race up in Vermont here. And he told me that when he's on a hard climb and he feels like he's just about to explode, like he's about to be done, his favorite tactic was to turn around and look at the rider behind him and smile. So yeah, I'm completely on board with this.
Love it. I think we've all done it. If you're into cycling, I've only just sort of got into it, that when you're catching someone, you're like blowing out of your derriere. You're like really, really struggling. But of course, as soon as you pass them, you'll sit up, look completely cool, just look like you're not struggling at all, and then you're in that horrible thing of, oh no, I've got to try to look composed for the next how many kilometers until they're gone, while you're actually dying inside. So yeah, there's always a little bit of that going on with him, but which is why, especially after the crashes on the Saturday, I thought he was genuinely hurt, because you see him when he's walking back into the motorhome, he looked shaken. He looked really shaken up. He looked physically hurt. And then obviously in the Sunday or the warm-up, and he's trying to get on the bike, you could see him, the crash on the Friday, but on the Saturday when he's getting up, you can see him moving around the Crown Jewels and having some problems. And a lot of the media accounts were just sort of laughing at it, saying, yeah, he's hurt the plums. But like, he was showing, that's the most weakness I've seen him show. So he must have been really, really hurting. But all that went away. Amazing. Just what can you say? Like when he got, he said he managed to get ahead of Alex, and then he was like 5 laps, I think, behind Bagnaia. And when Bagnaia got the whole shot, it's like, oh, come on, Pecco, like you can do this, you can go away. And then Mark's just really strong. I think it was in the final chicane when he got him, and then he just pulled off. But then you can see he was struggling for pace, because Jules, he didn't then just drop Bagnaia, pull away at all. It was one big sort of group, really.
Yeah, I kind of expected him to pull that comfortable gap and then pace it and maybe set some faster times near the end of the race, as we've seen him do in the last couple of weekends, really. But he wasn't really able to ditch Bezzecchi behind him, and it made us actually hope that maybe this fight is still on. Maybe Bezzecchi has looked after his tires better, and we get a fight for a few laps. I think like 6-7 laps before the end, it almost looked like Bagnaia would be able to join them as well. But then I think the last 3-4 laps he had to let him go, and I think Bezzecchi made one mistake in that phase, that final phase of the race, that gave Mark a decent gap. But yeah, it was. I think it was like he's been during the whole weekend. He was fast, he was up there, but he wasn't riding around with the sense of, I have something left if I need to. And maybe that was down to his injuries or his bruised body, but it was a different sight than we've had for the last couple of races.
Yeah, and I'm going to add, I don't think I've seen a weekend where if Mark is in front, he's not able at some point to pull a gap on his rivals. The only gaps we saw on Sunday were created by either his rivals losing pace or making mistakes. I think he was absolutely on his limit. This is obviously, given the number of right and left turns, a weak track for him. And you could see with Bagnaia, you could see with Bezzecchi, and if he'd been able to get up there, probably Acosta too, where they had distinct advantages on different parts of this track. So yeah, he absolutely skated this one, and he's lucky to get away with 2 wins, I think.
Well, yeah, he could be lucky to get away with 2 wins. I thought he played an absolute blinder there. And at the end, so he opens, I think he took his 68th Premier Class victory, which equals the great Giacomo Agostini. But he did take a bit of a parting shot at a journalist, and this is a topic we'll move into our next topic. It segues nicely into it, that, yeah, he made a bit of a pot, because I know particularly think Simon Patterson online, I like a lot of his stuff, but he's been, like, picking holes in the does Alex fight Mark hard enough and the brother thing, and there's been quite a lot of people pushing this rhetoric, and Mark come out, he was like, well, Bezzecchi couldn't attack me, and as we've said, yeah, you know, there were why didn't Bezzecchi just actually launch at him quite a lot? But we will talk about that in our next topic, because we're going to move on and talk a bit about Alex's brother. So Mark's brother, even, like, Mark defended his brother, and you need to respect all riders here. So we'll move on to talking a bit about Alex, and that was a bit of a missed chance for him there. So Mark on the deck during the Friday, Alex looking pretty quick, and then a very nasty crash. But before we get onto the crash, we'll just go straight onto this subject. Jules, I know you've had a bee in your bonnet about this quite a lot this season, about the Marquezes. What's your take on it?
My take on it is we've already had Alex saying he's my brother, and obviously I won't be able, or I won't fight him as hard as a sworn enemy, so to say. But that's just the same as, for instance, Pecco Bagnaia saying, I don't fight the VR46 Academy riders as hard as I would a more neutral enemy, because these are the guys that I train with that I grew up with, hang out with. So I don't have any problem with that, and I respect that they're honest about it. The thing with Marquez, Marc Marquez asking for respect all the riders, etc., is it's convenient now to point to Bezzecchi and say, yeah, well, look at him, he didn't attack me either. Yeah, but Bezzecchi's on an Aprilia that we didn't even expect to be in P2, and probably was very happy to be in P2, but especially he was squeezing every last bit of performance out of that machine. We saw some lovely slow motion replays of Bezzecchi coming through turn 12, I think, or 15. I don't know.
That right-hander.
Yeah, it's amazing, you know, having a power slide. So, but Alex Marquez is arguably on the best bike of the grid. And everybody knows and sees that this bike should be able to take the fight to who's ever in front of him. And so I think that's it's like measuring with two sizes, as we say. I don't know what the English expression is, but I think it's not fair to point to Bezzecchi on that Aprilia, and Bezzecchi goes AWOL half of the races and suddenly he's there, or point at Alex, who is an actual world title contender this year.
Okay, so I have many thoughts about this. And they're entirely disordered and disorganized, as is my way. But I'd like to start with picking up from what Jules just said and saying, look, if we're going to have a comparison, well, how about Bagnaia at the start of Mugello? I think that's a much better comparison. And I think if you look at the way Alex raced his brother, it's not the way Bagnaia raced at Mugello, even though he knew he couldn't win racing that way. And so this is an interesting thing to take on board. But my real complaint here is about Marquez implying that to even ask this question is disrespecting the riders. I'm 180 degrees on this. I think not asking that question is an immense sign of disrespect, because it's an obvious question. They're brothers. Alex has said, I'm not going to race him as hard because I think he's faster. Well, it's an entirely reasonable question, and it's important to answer it factually, as was done. And in this case, yeah, Alex was faster. He could have beaten me, except for at the only places you could pass, I actually had an advantage. And once you as a rider know that, then all you're saying is, I'd rather crash you out and not finish the race than finish behind you. And he's smarter than that. That's the correct answer here.
Boom, you just hit on exactly what I was going to say. I was sort of my hands up wavy. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the point I'm going to say. And just to kind of rebuff Jules's sort of like stance, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here and turn it on its head. So you said that Marco Bezzecchi on the Aprilia was just going to be happy in second, and is maybe performing really well, so he's not going to try and take a crazy move. I think that's the exact position that Alex Marquez is in. He's never done this well in the championship. He's second in the championship. He has more to lose. He ultimately knows Mark might be stronger, and Trumpets just picked up on it. He's riding with his head. And you mentioned Mugello. Perfect. Alex actually said at the start of Mugello he didn't want to fight because he knew he was going to destroy his tyres. And Becco did fight and destroyed his tyres. So, like, Alex didn't want to and almost lost the podium. No, almost lost second place to Digi in the end because he was really struggling at the end because he got forced into fighting. So, yeah, I completely admit of course they're going to be softer, Jules. But, like, yeah, I think the disrespect what Mark's going on about is people suggesting that constantly, like, he doesn't fight him just because it's his brother. I think Alex is racing in a way that maximises his result for what he thinks is his own potential. And I have won championships by doing this, by realising I'm not the fastest. So I'm just going to maximise my results. And I've actually waved rivals by at times so I can then nick their slipstream and have them drag me away from people who are faster behind. There is a tactic to it. I get why I was being upon it, but I'm always going to use that defence for their tactics here.
Yeah. If you put it like that, but I understand why people ask questions then, because that's a really conservative and cautious way of going about it, and people, I think fans are dying for the fights between title rivals that we've seen in the last 2 seasons, and to see the only guy remotely in touch of Marc Marquez and remotely able to prevent every sprint and every Sunday race to be a Marquez victory, to see him, almost like we saw in Mugello turn 1, he just opens up the door. While we saw this weekend, you can defend without messing up your tires. You can try to protect your position, but I think that there is a difference between not attacking your brother or opening up the door when he's behind you. So, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. That can be a tactic to then use him to at least pull away yourself from the riders behind.
That is a good point. And yeah, I get it. We all want that crazy hard battle. And let's face it, you're never going to get that between two brothers. And the points difference is too big now. So I reckon later in season, Mark might let Alex nab a couple wins once the championship's pretty much gone and buried. But somebody who doesn't back off and certainly isn't afraid to get involved in a fight is Pedro Acosta. And this is the second bit of this for Alex Marquez. Trumpets first and then Jules. Whose fault is it? The massive crash that happened.
I am going to go out on my limb, and I'm going to say this was on Marquez. He got too wound up fighting with Acosta, and I don't think it was necessary. If you look at the course of Acosta's whole race, it might not have been this lap, but it was going to be a lap, and not too far in the future he was going to be around him, because the KTM just isn't as good as Acosta was on it. The KTM just isn't up to the same snuff as the Gresini bike. And I think he just got, I don't know, he got the red mist, maybe we call it in cycling. You go on tilt and poker, call it what you will. And he just flew a little too close to the sun there and seriously cost himself.
Yeah, this is going to be a bit boring maybe, but I thought Alex was the one who would be able to avoid this. And it reminded me of the very controversial Alex Marquez Pecco Bagnaia crash at Aragon last season. And I think that was a more 50-50 situation, but it was a situation where you think, maybe you could have been sensible and back out of this. Why try and immediately rebound in the same corner or the next corner? I fully agree with Matt. Knowing the bike you're on, let Acosta go for like a couple of corners or a couple of laps. You're going to be able to regain that position. And this just felt like Alex Marquez not having that that calmness, that composure to, okay, let this be, and I will be able to have a rebound later on.
That's a good way. I mean, I can't agree with you guys. So I'm just not going to let that happen. So basically, I think this is a very unfortunate incident. But to put some context to it, I think it was lap 3. Acosta mugged. Well, it was a semi-assault. He mugged him into Distribution. Have I butchered that? What's the corner called? I think it's Distribution. The corner's called the famous hairpin at Assen.
Yes,
and it was really that. Yeah. Okay, that one. So he mugged him into there, and it was a really hard move and kind of barged him out of the way a little bit. And then it was lap 6 that Alex Marquez tries to return the favour. And Acosta, I mean, they don't particularly get on, I don't think. And Acosta's a tough racer. So they've obviously leant in. They're obviously leaning on each other a little bit. And you never want handlebar to handlebar contact. And in Alex's defence, I think it was unlucky to go down. They were leaning on each other. And as the track sort of comes back to the left and kinks out, and as it's gone to kink out, the front wheel's in the air, but I think it just clips his brake lever, doesn't it? And as the front wheel touches down, it's locked, and down he goes. I do understand what you're saying, though. Was it necessary to be leaning on him quite that hard? I think Alex wanted to get the move done a bit earlier, but Acosta was hanging it out. Alex, I think, knew he had a really good pace, and I think Alex is thinking, Mark's weak, I can try to do something or force him into a mistake. I've got a chance. And he was trying to get forward, start putting the pressure on. But yes, lap 6 of like a 22-lap race, I think it was. So yeah, I kind of semi-agree with you guys. Like, he could have maybe had a bit more patience there, but this could have ramifications. His second in the championship, nursing it, he's gone down so hard. His right shoulder and collarbone must be made of titanium, because that's incredible. I can't believe. As soon as it went down, I'm like, wow, that's got to be at least a collarbone or a shoulder that is done. But in the end, Jules, I think it's his left hand, isn't it? He's broken a bone in.
Yeah, his left hand somehow. I mean, like you said, maybe he's got some Terminator-esque skeleton, but yeah, and he hit his head very hard as well. I mean, bless the crash helmet. But yeah, I think Matt, you alluded to it in our chat, that probably the force with he hit the tarmac that probably broke his left hand, and he had surgery today in Spain, which apparently went well. But they didn't say anything about an expected return date. With Germany 10 days away from here, I think that doesn't sound like it's a given for him to be there.
Yeah, so I was actually reading up on this a little bit, and it sounds like the report is he broke his left metacarpal, which is one of the bones in your hand below the finger. And yeah, just the physics of it is kind of weird, because when you fall off a bike, and I know this because I was doing some research on bike helmets because I got into an argument with someone on the internet a while ago, they test them as a static drop from basically a 6-foot height, which is about how high your head is off the ground when you're on a bike. And the person writing about it said, essentially, we do this because how fast you're going is kind of irrelevant. It's how high you are down to the ground. But in the case of this accident, once he hit the ground, he was still going, I don't know, what, 150 kilometers an hour? And you can see he hits something and rotates onto his back, and his hand goes all the way out, extends, and comes all the way back down onto the pavement. And I think that amount of energy is really what did him in there. And oh God, I've broken a metacarpal before, and yeah, it is not any kind of fun.
No, yeah, I think you're right. It's the rolling and the hand slap onto the tarmac, which has got him. But we've seen him before in Jerez. He had a couple of egg-beating crashes and got straight back on and went fastest in the session. So he's a Marquez. We know they're all made of tough stuff. But yeah, Sachsenring's predominantly left-handers, lots and lots and lots of left-handers. And of course, as you know, to get these bikes to turn, they've got to put a lot of pressure through the foot pegs, but also the handlebars pushing on that left hand. So he's going to be sore. I fully expect him to be in Sachsenring, but he's going to be very, very sore indeed. So at this time in the show, we like to remind you that if you're enjoying this and you're watching on YouTube, why not give us a subscribe? Or give us a review on whatever pod platform you may be listening to us on. If you'd like to get in touch, we try to respond to all the emails or give us some feedback. Then you can send us an email at mrapexmoto@gmail.com. That's mrapexmoto with a capital M at gmail.com. Okay, then, so our third topic I want to talk about is a bit of a two-pronged one here. Bez, what a fantastic weekend for Bezzecchi, but in the face of a lot of Jorge Martin controversy, Jules.
Yeah, it was almost a shame that this kind of overshadowed everything Bez did this weekend, because he qualified well. He had a sprint podium and then finished second on Sunday, of course. But the main Aprilia talk was about Jorge Martin with his agent on the Friday, I think, saying, Jorge is free of contract in 26, so he's open, available, and yes, Honda is an option. And that raised some eyebrows left and right. Then we had Alberto Puig, the Honda guy, who said, if he's open and free, sure, we're an option. And it was kind of, not kind of, it was just remarkable that MotoGP itself, by CEO Espeleta, he said, we won't allow Honda or whatever team to field a rider who's still under contract with another team. So there was a clear warning to everyone that first this needs to be solved between Jorge Martin and Aprilia if he's to race wherever. And then I think the most blatant remark was made by Massimo Rivola, the Aprilia boss, on Sunday after the race. And he just said Jorge Martin is not free, so he won't go anywhere, and we'll either settle this between us or we're going to court, and we are fine with both. And I think that was a very strong message about how confident they feel that they are in the right.
I'm just laughing because this is just like essentially two kids mouthing off in a schoolyard as far as I'm concerned. I don't really know what's being negotiated here, but I'm pretty convinced at this point that whatever they're actually negotiating has nothing to do with where he winds up next season. I don't know what the issue is. Don't know what's going on, but it's just bizarre for his manager to just like step out on a Friday and say, "Oh, by the way, the heck with all you guys. We're going to do whatever we want. You can't possibly stop us." And then the team to immediately come back and say, "Oh, yes, we can. Yes, we can." This is about something else. Maybe we'll find out what this other thing is or not. But I don't think it has anything to do with what they're actually talking about in the press right now.
Yeah, and you start to think exactly like what you say, Matt, because performance-wise, maybe in the first phase of this season, he would have had a point, because Aprilia wasn't really anywhere where you would want them to be, having a world champion on board. But the last couple of races, and it even, I think it started with Bezzecchi suddenly winning at Silverstone, but they have been there or thereabouts for most of the time, and it just keeps you wondering, what would Jorge Martin be able to do on this bike, but to throw some more fuel on the fire today, Jorge Martin was declared not fit to race at Sachsenring, but fit enough to perform that test that is allowed nowadays, to run a rider who has been injured for I think the rule was three races or 3 months. I don't recall exactly, but. And so he would be able to test this week on Thursday or Friday. But, said Aprilia today, that's just great, Jorge. That's nice for you. But we're not going to test you this week. You know what we're going to do? We're going to wait for another medical test next week to see if you're fully race fit, and then maybe we'll give you that test. So it just everything smells of a lot of political game.
Spicy. So are you suggesting that Jorge might be acting a little bit more hurt than he actually is in these in these assessments, so he doesn't have to come and ride? Because the relationship surely is getting quite sour. It must be quite strange and a bit sour between them. So, that's interesting. So what are you saying, Jules? So if he passes the next medical, like next week, Aprilia are going to give him a private test, but he still won't be at Saxonry?
Yeah, the doctor who assessed him today said that he's nearing 100% fitness, and the bone strength is nearing 100%, like it should be. It's not really there. So he said you are allowed to test from now on, but you won't be racing at Germany. And I think Aprilia translates that as, why would we hand you a test right now? You don't want to be with us. You're not going to race in Germany. You know what? We're going to spend our money and time at something else. And let's see where we are next week and what the doctors say then. And then if you are race fit, then contractually, they need to put him on the bike.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go with this. If I'm Aprilia, this is my moment of maximum leverage. You look at how Bezzecchi did, you look at the bike, and you've got the complete counter argument to them not meeting their side of the original contract. But then you have the doctor's reports, which are, well, your ribs aren't 100% healed, your scaphoid isn't 100% healed, and with someone of Martin's formally demonstrated caliber, are you going to put someone who's still got not entirely healed bones on a bike when they've not ridden in so long? No, I'm still looking at that as an investment that I don't want to break yet again until I'm sure that he's as fit as he's going to be.
Yeah, good point. Here's a delicate asset, as we've seen, very, very delicate at the moment. But one really interesting point of this, and I was just looking up the standings. So we believe the clause was if Jorge Martin wasn't in the top 5 in the championship, or Aprilia wasn't in the top 5 of the championship, was it that he could trigger this clause, or if he wasn't there? So Marco Bezzecchi is only 15 points off of Fabio Di Antonio in 5th in the championship now, and you would have thought that had Jorge Martin been on the bike, that he definitely would have met that clause. So all of this Bezzecchi doing really well is actually really, really kind of almost fueling the fire, Trumpets.
Yeah, and to me, this is the danger. Bezzecchi had an amazing race, but what if they go to the next track and they don't? That again puts the ball back in Martin's court, and that's why I'm thinking, yeah, if they really wanted, they'd put him on the bike now when they have maximum leverage and say, see, we are giving you a good bike. You don't have a good reason to leave us. But I think it's really honestly more about the long-term financial investment, because they still are arguing, you're our rider. We're going to have you on this bike and we want you here for the long term.
Yeah, what a messy situation. And like I said, yeah, this is kind of taking the shine away from Bezzecchi, really, because he's done such a great thing. And I personally think, we'll move on because we're getting short on time, but I personally think that if Bezzecchi could have snuck past Marquez, or just got a tiny bit closer, didn't make those mistakes, I think Bezzecchi could have won that race. Like, I fully expected him to win the race by about mid-distance. I was like, there's no way Mark's going to hang on to this. Bezzecchi looks too strong. So it'd be interesting. I think Bezzecchi probably will nab another win or two by the end of the season. But great point, Matt. It'd be interesting to see what they do at Sachsenring. There's a lot of time lent over on the side of the bike, and we know they're quite good at ground effect. So that'll be interesting. So moving on then, let's get on to our best of the rest, some honourable mentions. And Jules, KTM slowly coming back to the fore.
Yep, they had a great race at Aragon, then struggled a bit at Mugello, which was kind of weird because their straight line speed is still up there. Like,
well, the factory riders struggled. Mav was doing really well, wasn't he, until he got Morbidelli'd.
That's true. But yeah, we had at one point we had 4 bikes, 4 KTMs, all 4 in the top 10, and then in the last 2 laps, I think, on Sunday. Brad Binder lost P10, but they were up there, and it was really good to see Acosta fighting for the top positions, and to see him being able to hang on to Bagnaia, who was able to more or less hang on to Bezzecchi, who was able to more or less hang on to Marquez. It was great. And Vinales said afterwards, it doesn't really matter when I struggle in qualifying, because this bike gives me the hard late braking and the power on the straights to make up places during the races. So it all sounds promising, and that's really good to see.
And yet, just a few races ago, we were hearing from Acosta how the KTM was completely unacceptable, and he was ready to move on to greener pastures. I mean, this is just what MotoGP riders do.
Yeah, I guess so, but I still think Acosta is still somewhat a bit angry, because let's face it, he's had a shocking season. It's been Maverick who's been the shining star, really, for KTM, but as Jules said, it's been lovely to see Acosta getting in there and doing what he can do. And I'm afraid Trumpets, like Binder's been having a shocker, but it's great to see Acosta in the mix.
It is great to see Acosta in the mix, but let's not forget, once again, you're talking about well, I won't use that term, but you're talking about someone who was an absolute rookie last year, a sensation on a satellite team, walking up to the main factory team with a lot more resource and a lot more complexity. And also at a very unfortunate time for them in a business point of view. And yet still, here we are halfway through the season, and they've put him back on a bike where there's that podium, you know, and they have given him within a season something he can be attacking on that suits his style and that clearly shows his class as a rider. I just think that, MotoGP riders can get impatient from time to time. That's all.
Always. All motorsport people are constantly impatient. Someone else has been showing his class as well, and is worthy of another mention. We mentioned him last week as well for Mugello. Raul Fernandez. Awesome. Second weekend in a row. Came through Q1. Was looking really, really quick, as his teammate had some big old crashes. Looked really good, and he finished P8 for the first time. Well, for the second time in as many weeks, Matt. Like he's been looking really quick, as Igor has been obviously a bit hurt and had some egg-beating crashes. But we need to give Raul a bit of praise.
We absolutely do. I mean, he has long been like, he had the talent. It was one lap talent, and the knock was always, can you learn to put a race together? And just when you're ready to give up on him, suddenly, there it is. And I'm reminded of a detail that I heard that just made me very happy, was that Bezzecchi switched to the new aero on the Aprilia on the Sunday morning because he had some kind of an issue with his main bike, and they just went out there and said, "Oh yeah, I'll run the new rear aero." He ran it around the track for his sighting lap. He's like, yeah, I like it. Let's just do that. So, yeah, there was that too.
Nice. Bit like Marquez then, being forced into running the new air on a Ducati.
Exactly.
Issues. Yeah, really. How odd. So, yeah, Jules, Fernandez is doing really well. And I think he said they had I think it was the Aragon test, where I think he's found something. Is he mimicking Digi from a couple of years ago?
Well, let's hope so for him. Like as Matt alluded to, he was once a very, very promising talent, and got off to a good start. But this season, he kind of drowned a bit in the backfield. And earlier in the season, he kind of seemed to hit rock bottom when he just came out and said to the media, "I'm just not able to put a race together, to string multiple laps together, and perform at the level that I know I could." And that was filled with so much self-doubt and little belief that it almost hurt to listen to him say that. So he must be thrilled to kindly put the pieces together and perform these in this way. And let's hope it's for real this time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always great to see people getting this thing. And yeah, I'll lead it to it there. I think this is almost mirroring Digi. Remember, Digi was down and out and looking like he was going to lose his ride, and then all of a sudden they found a setup setting and it just transformed him. And I think Fernandez is kind of saying they might have found something which is going really well for him, and it's lovely to see. So another team we'll just quickly mention them, we're fast running out of time, another team who desperately needs to find something. The last couple of races have been shocking for Honda. Again, mere 2 crashes as normal now, almost like he's sort of crashing. Honda have been absolutely nowhere, and also poor Quartararo with the Yamaha as well, just plummeted. I think Matt mentioned it earlier, he got caught up in someone else's crash and had to avoid it and ran through the gravel. Really, really, it was a shame they couldn't put those wonderful liveries, Matt, like more in the cameras, because they're just beautiful.
It's the curse of the special livery, ain't it? Just like, yeah. The moment you go to the media and make a big deal about yourself, you're just doomed. But I agree with you. Those liveries were just kicking. I loved them. Yeah,
absolutely. We want more of that. So moving on then, I think we can wrap up there then pretty much. So Marc Marquez has extended his lead to a whopping 68 points now. That's almost 2 full race weekends advantage he has over Alex. So he's 68 points ahead of Alex. Bagnaia is now 126 points behind Alex, so he's closed up on Alex a little bit. Morbidelli is still in 4th in 168, and he was a naughty boy again. We should probably touch on it with he seemed to slightly D over his own teammate in this time. I don't know what's going on. Like who keeps putting 20p's into Morbidelli? I don't know what's going on. He's going mad. He's on a mad on this season, but anyway, he's in 4th in the championship in this fight, which looks like it could get bitter now between his teammate Gin Antonio and Bez. It's only 15 points behind them, back lurking in 6th. That's one to keep an eye on. So as always with the show, we like to finish with some awards. So Matt, come to you first. Who was your rider of the weekend?
Yeah, man, that is, there are so many people that present themselves, but since you've come to me, I will take the second most obvious choice here and go with Bezzecchi, because dang boy, riding that Aprilia, qualifying, and just giving you that taste that yeah, you know, it finally, they have recreated the magic they had last season. And as someone who is not expected to lead that charge, being able to step up, shoulder the responsibility, do the work with the factory team as a lead driver, and then finally bring it home. Oh, yeah. Good feeling. Goosebumps. Way to go, man.
Excellent. Showing Jorge what he is missing. Jules, who was your rider of the weekend?
Okay, I won't go for the clear choice, so let's give it to Pecco Bagnaia. For once, let's give it to him. I mean, he qualified P2 in front of his teammate. He actually said that he felt the best on the bike that he's felt this season so far. And on Sunday, despite looking a bit unhappy, I thought, he did say, "I think I will be there in 2 or 3 races." So let's pinpoint the Austrian Grand Prix. That's three races. And see if he's really up there.
Okay, fair enough. That's a surprising one. Yeah, that was arguably one of his strongest weekends that we've seen, like, you know, performance-wise and close to the win in recent history. So yeah, fair play. I very rarely ever give it to Mark, actually. I chose someone else, but because of this one, considering the plum situation, then yeah, Mark has it in the bag for me. That beaten up, hurt, at one of your weakest tracks and not having the fastest pace, and the 3rd consecutive double in a row whilst injured, stuff a legend, that, in my opinion. So we'll move on to a moment of the weekend. Jules, I will let you go first for this one.
I was still laughing a bit about the many times that you have referred to Mark's plums this episode, but okay, let's go.
It's a record. I'm trying to get as many in as possible.
Moment of the weekend, I'm going to go for the Ayogura fire on Friday. I mean, this guy, he high-sided it, and then his bike I think it just hit the tarmac in a weird angle, and it just set fire. And maybe the most remarkable thing about it was that he was just sat there in the gravel, not far from that bike. The bike was catching fire and flames and everything, and it took a while for the marshals to come there with an extinguisher, as if that thing couldn't explode or something. So it was a spectacular view.
That was a scary crash as well. Matt, what was your moment of the weekend?
Oh, I think I'm actually struggling a little bit with this one. I think I'm going to go with Bagnaia in the lead for the second straight race. And I'm kind of Team Jules here. Sometimes your results don't bear out your actual performance. But we've spent a whole season with him entirely lost. The last two races, we've seen him in the lead on Sunday. Something has changed. And I can only hope, because, I got very spoiled last season. I can only hope that it augurs a much better and fiercer competition to the end of the season is nigh. It is almost here.
Well, here's hoping. We can only hope. My moment of the weekend was the brief shot that we got near the end of the race, where there was the three remaining Yamahas with that wonderful livery fighting with Johan Zarco. So we got the three old, the 90s World Superbikes Yamaha liveries fighting with a Castrol Honda, and it just gave me a flashback to, was it Haga? And Colin Edwards, I think in 97 rode that bike. It's mainly for, I think 1998 with Haga, and then Haga riding the Yamaha in those colours, and then Colin Edwards and Aaron Slight on the Castrol Honda, and it was just a hark back to my childhood of just watching World Superbikes, and it was just a wonderful little flashback for me, and I want more of these liveries. What we would like more of is you following my panel. Jules, where can you get hold of you?
You can follow me on Blue Sky, and the handle is Jules on Racing.
Excellent. Matt, where can people get you?
You can find me at MattPT55 on almost all of your socials.
Excellent. And you can also go and find us on YouTube and give us a subscribe and a follow, and also leave us a review on whatever pod platform you catch us on. We'll be back again in 2 weeks to review round 11, the German Grand Prix at Sachsenring, where I will have a weekend off in exile myself and leave you in the capable hands of Jules and Matt. As always, thanks for listening to Missed Apex MotoGP.